Morning.
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 We're in Daf Chaf Gimel Amud Aleph Masech the Shabbos, the Chanuka Sugya. The last Sugya we learned, the Gemara proved that Hadlaka Oisa Mitzvah, not Hanocha. The Gemara had this interesting question: what is the mitzvah of Hadlakas Ner Chanukah? Is it to light the candle? Baruch Hashem, Shlomo ben Simcha was released from the hospital late last week. Chazdei Hashem, Baruch Hashem. So we had this, the Gemara had this interesting question. We would never think of this question. The reason we wouldn't think of this question is because the Gemara at the end tells us the bracha proves the question. The Gemara said the bracha on Hadlakas Ner Chanukah is Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Asher Mitzvot Tzivanu Lahadlik Ner Shel Chanukah. It says Lahadlik. So before you learn this Gemara, nobody has a Havamina. Nobody would even consider the proposition that the mitzvah of Chanukah is to take the menorah and put it in its place. That the Hanocha is Oisa mitzvah, not the Hadlaka. The Gemara had this question: what's the mitzvah? To light it or to put it in its place? The difference was, Tosfos explained at the bottom of Chaf Beis Amud Beis, let's say you ask a 6-year-old to light the candles for you. So the 6-year-old lights the candles. If the lighting is the mitzvah, you didn't do the mitzvah, because you can't have a 6-year-old light the candles for you. But let's say the Hanoch is a mitzvah. Putting it in its place is the mitzvah. So you ask a 6-year-old to light the candles. He lights it in your kitchen. You pick up the menorah carefully and you put it outside your door. Then it's a good mitzvah. You did it. You put it in its proper place. So before you learn the Gemara, you would have never even considered the idea that putting it in its place is the mitzvah. What do you mean putting it in its place? The mitzvah is lahadlik ner shel Chanukah. And that was the Gemara's final proof, that the hadlaka is oisa mitzvah and not the hanocha. Lighting it is the mitzvah. And therefore, since lighting it is the mitzvah, the original question that we started with, can you light one wick from another wick, has now been answered. You can light one wick from another wick, because what's the mitzvah? The hadlaka. So lighting a wick from another wick is doing the mitzvah. The lighting is the mitzvah. If the hanocha is the mitzvah, just putting it in its place, then you can't light a wick from another wick, because the lit wick is already lit. The one that's not lit is not lit, and it's improper to light one from another if that's not the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to put it in its place. But if the hadlaka is oisa mitzvah, then the lighting is a mitzvah, then lighting one from another is the mitzvah, so you're allowed to do it. And the Gemara proved that that's how it was done in the Beis Hamikdash, with long wicks in the menorah in the Heichal. So therefore, that becomes the conclusion of the Gemara, that you can light from wick to wick. And even if you follow the Gemara carefully, you can even light wick to wick with a twig in between, a kisei. Nevertheless, Tosfos, we read on Daf Chaf Gimel, Tosfos says, even though that is the maskana of the Gemara al pi halacha, the minhag ha'olam is lahachmir. We don't light a candle from a candle. We talked about this last week. If someone, it's a fourth night of Chanuka, you lit the fourth candle, then you lit the third candle, you lit the second candle, and then the fourth candle blew out. You cannot take candle 3 or candle 2 to relight candle 4. You can either use the shamash to relight candle 4, and if the shamash blew out also, you have to take a match, relight the shamash, and relight number 4. You cannot use the fi our minhag, one candle to relight another candle. Okay. And from there, the Gemara said, well, if the hadlaka is a mitzvah, then if a cherish, shoita, or a katan, a cherish is a deaf person. Cherish has a specific definition Chevish is Eina Shemeh Ve'eina Medaber usually. A person that can't talk and a person that can't hear, he can't light for you. Shota, a halachically insane person can't light for you. Someone that's not bar mitzvah can't light for you. But then the Gemara said, Isha vadei madlika. A woman can certainly light. The Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Nashim Chayos de Chanuka Shafim Hayabois Anes, and we had our Talmudic riddle. If somebody would ask you, if you want to make believe that you know all of Shas, somebody would ask you, tell me the 3 places in Shas that women are mechuyev in a mitzvah, even though it's a time-generated mitzvah, and all 3 have the same author. Wow, that's a big question. The answer is the author is Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, and the 3 mitzvahs are rabbinic mitzvahs. A woman is mechuyev to light Chanukah candles because they too were subject to the miracle. Women are to drink 4 kosos Leil Pesach because they too were subject of the miracle. And women are supposed to hear Mikra Megillah because they too were subject of the miracle. So it's Chanukah candles, Mikra Megillah, and drinking 4 kosos. The reason that women are chayiv in those 3, even though they're time-sensitive mitzvahs and noshim are potem in mitzvahs aseishas man grama, is for the reason afhein hayu sanes. They also were subject to the miracle, and therefore they have to celebrate the miracle. The author of all 3 of these rules is Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. We're only talking about mitzvahs to Rabbanan. Of course, there are mitzvahs d'oraisa like eating matzah on Pesach, which is a biblical mitzvah, which the Gemara learns out from a pasuk that women are supposed to eat matzah on the night of the Seder. Okay, that's where we're up to.
I have just one small question.
Yeah.
What is the? How do we define the halachic definition of shaita? Is, for example, someone who's slow in learning. He's got learning disabilities.
No.
That doesn't make him a shaita. That doesn't know him.
Absolutely not. We're not dealing about psychiatric evaluations here. The Gemara in Chagiga has several definitions of what a shaita is, something that you wouldn't hear psychiatrists talk about. For example, the Gemara says a person that you give items to. You give him a shirt, or you give him a bicycle. Whatever you give him, he will break and destroy. He doesn't maintain anything. If you give him something, he breaks it and destroys it. That's a sign of a shaita. The Gemara says, "Alon bebeis hakvara." Somebody likes to sleep in a graveyard. Right. So if you told a psychiatrist this is a person who likes to sleep in a graveyard, you would say, "Okay, so he likes to sleep in a graveyard." To each his own. Right? Today we're living in a world of each his own. Man can become woman, woman can become man. This particular guy took a mattress and put it in a graveyard. This was the Chazal. That was an indication of shaita. But there are a lot of tshuvas in the Achroinim. Rav Moshe has tshuvas about, for example, a woman that's a shaita can't be given a get. What is the modern day definition of a shaita? So the question is, how much of psychiatric evaluations are acceptable within halacha for the purpose of shota? So now the Gemara continues. About 13 lines from the top of Rav Gimel Amud Aleph at the 2 dots. Amar Rav Sheshes says, Achsanoi. Achsanoi, if you look at the last line of the Rashis on the wide lines, at the top, Achsanoi Oreya, a guest. You're a guest in someone's house. This is a very short piece of Gemara, and it's perhaps the most complex piece of Gemara in Hilchos Chanukah. And we'll soon see why. Achsanoi, a guest comes to spend a night of Chanukah, or 2 nights of Chanukah with Eliezer, or with me, or with George, or with Yosef, or with Baruch. Somebody comes and says, can I spend 2 nights? I need a place to sleep, 2 nights Hanukkah to eat. I'd like to stay at your place. Say, sure. Now he's a guest. Does he have to light Ner Hanukkah? The Gemara says, Achsanoi Chayav Ner Chanukah. A guest is mechuyev to light Ner Chanukah. Now the question here is a very interesting question. Let's say you have a person who's homeless. He doesn't have a home, loyal lady, and he sleeps in the street the whole year. Is he mechuyev in Ner Chanukah? Where's he supposed to light? What requires a Ner Chanukah? A home. And if you have a home, you do Ner Chanukah. Why do you do Ner Chanukah? Because of Parsumei Nisa. So every home needs at least a Chanukiah, or as we learned, one candle every night takes care of the whole house. But the house has to have candles lit, or a candle lit, for Parsumei Nisa. This person doesn't have a house. What's he supposed to do? And we're going to soon see today that there's a halacha about such a person. So therefore, when we think about Ner Chanukah, it's a similar question to like we talked about last week, tzitzis. You have a four-cornered garment in your drawer, and you don't have tzitzis on the four-cornered garment because you don't intend to wear it. Or you're going to wear it, you bought a four-cornered garment for your son's wedding, and the wedding is in 3 months from now. In the olden days, right? The olden days, they wore robes that had four corners. A person picked up his four-cornered robe for his son's wedding. He put it in the drawer. He's not going to wear it for 3 months. Does that four-cornered garment need tzitzis on it before you wear it? So we learned last week there was a machlekes Rav and Shmuel whether you can take off tzitzis from one beged and put it on another beged. Right? And the question that Tosas brought into the Sugya was, what is tzitzis? Is tzitzis a chovas gavra, or is tzitzis a chovas mana, chovas kli? What is the chiyuv of tzitzis? It's the chiyuv of the garment. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, four-cornered garments need tzitzis. I don't care if it's in your drawer. I don't care if it's you're wearing it. Four-cornered garment needs tzitzis. So even if it's laying in your drawer and you're not using it, it needs tzitzis. That's one possibility. The other possibility is HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, when you wear a four-cornered garment, it shall have tzitzis. But if you're not wearing it, it doesn't need to have tzitzis. So the question is tzitzis an obligation on the person, or is tzitzis an obligation on the garment? Here we have a similar question coming up. Is lighting Hanukkah candles an obligation on the person? So even if he doesn't have a house, he has to light candles. Where should he light candles? If he's living on a park bench, he has to put a Chanukiah near the park bench. That's if it's an obligation on the person. But if it's an obligation that the home must have candles for Parsumei Nisa, this person doesn't have a home. So here the Gemara says, Achsanoi Chayav B'Ner Chanukah. A guest is required to light Ner Chanukah. Now here we don't know exactly why the Gemara is saying it. Is the Gemara saying that a person doesn't need a home to light candles? And this guest right now is basically homeless, but he's living in your house. But he still has to light candles because even if you don't own a home, you have to light candles. That's possibility number one. Possibility number two, the guest has to light candles because his home is your home. He does have a home. So we're not sure what this means, and we'll see what the Gemara says about this. But a guest in your house is chayav to light Ner Chanukah. Amar Reb Zera, to which Reb Zera commented, Meiresh, originally, Kihava Avina Beirav, when I would go learn Torah by Rav. In other words, Reb Zera left his home for a couple of days Chanukah, and he went to learn Torah by Rav. So he wasn't at home, and he was a guest. Mishtatfina b'priti bahadi ushpisi. There are people that still do this. I've had guests in my house for Chanukah that have done this. They're mishtatif b'priti. They say, here is 10 shekel, and I want to be partner in the oil and the wick. And when you light the candle and you make the bracha, they listen to the bracha, they answer Amen, and they yoitze the mitzvah Ner Chanukah. They don't have to actually light their own Chanukiah. They become partners in your Chanukiah by giving you 5 shekel, 10 shekel. That's called mishtatfina bepriti behadushpiz. I was mishtatef with a pruta, with some money to my host. So Reb Zeva said that's what I used to do when I was single. If I was a guest in someone's house when I was single, I gave the balabaya some money. Bossa the Nasivi, Reb Zeva says, but after I got married, so after I married my wife, Amina, I said, Hashta vadai loitzar richna. Now I'm not giving the host any money. I don't have to give the host any money. Why? My wife is lighting back at home. So I don't have to light anymore. Now, this is a very interesting statement by Reb Zeva. What's exactly Reb Zeva saying here? Right now, I'm a guest on the road. When I was single, I had an independent mitzvah to light Ner Chanukah. How did I do that? I didn't ask the Balabayas for a Chanukiah, and I didn't even bring a Chanukiah with me. What did I do? I gave the Balabayas 5 shekel, and I said, listen, I'm the partner with you in the oil and the wick. But once I got married, I didn't even give the Balabayas any money. Why? Because my chiyuv, listen to this, Rabbi said. This is what Rabbi is saying. Now that I'm married and I have a household, I have to light Chanuka candles because I have a house. But my wife is back home, and my wife is going to light candles at home. And therefore, the Parsume Nisa that I'm mechuyev to do in my house, now that I have a house, who is going to do that Parsume Nisa? My wife, when she lights. How much Parsume Nisa do you need to do? A house gets lit. What did we just learn a couple of lines ago? We learned it more in depth last week. A woman could be madlik for a man. So Reb Zera, before he's married, he has no home. He doesn't have a wife that's lighting for him. Maybe he has an apartment somewhere, but no one is lighting in that apartment for him. He's on the road. So his host, who is lighting, he gives him, he says, we're partners. But once he got married and he has a home, he didn't give the host any money because he has a wife who's now doing the Parsume Nisa in their apartment. And that's it, he's done. But how can a woman do it? Because a woman could be might see a man with Hadlakas Ner Chanukah. Now this is the end, this is the 2 dots, it's the end of the Sugya. This is perhaps the most complex Sugya in all of Hilchos Chanukah. And it happens to almost every single one of us every Chanukah, and the halachas are very confusing. I'll use myself as an example. We invite our children to come over for a Chanukah party. So they come over, and it's a Tuesday night Chanukah. So they come over one or 2 ways. Either they come over at 4 o'clock before time to light Chanukah candles, and they're going to be in my home to light Chanukah candles. And now 1 or 2 things happens. They're going to stay for the Chanukah, they're going to be here for the Chanukah party, which is going to go till 8, 9 at night. And the kinderlach, they don't want to schlep home. So everybody's going to sleep in my house. Okay. The other possibility is, after the Chanukah party, everybody's going back to their house. What should my children do? They're my guests in my house. Each of them has their own apartment. What should they do? There are all kinds of shittas. Remember, Erev Shabbos, Chanukah, we light candles very early, because we have to light before we light Shabbos. So we light pretty early. We light much earlier than we do on a regular night. So some people say that if your guests, I'm using children as an example, if your guests are coming before the Chanukah party, and it's already after Plag, let's use Plag Mincha, it's after Plag Mincha, they should light at home as if it's a Friday afternoon. Let them light at home, come eat for the Chanukah party in your house, and then go back to sleep in their house. If they're going to sleep in their house, they should light in their house, even if they're going to light early. Let them light early, come to the Chanuka party, go back home to sleep. What happens if they're coming to my house for a Chanuka party and they're going to sleep in my house? So they're going to eat in my house and sleep in my house. That night they should light in my house. But you got a problem. That means that there's a house, an apartment that doesn't have a Chanuka lit in it. And what's the problem? No Parsume Nissa is being done in that apartment. And this is just a general question. Are people allowed to leave their Hanukkah, their houses, the evening of Hanukkah, and leave the house unlit completely? And that's going to be a sugya later that's going to come up about Maris Ayin. So this question of guests is a very complex question. Are your guests coming? So for example, let's say your guests are coming 7 o'clock at night. Well, 7 o'clock at night is they should have lit Hanukkah candles 2 hours before. So that's a very basic, simple case. They would have lit Hanukkah candles at home before they came to you. What happens if they're coming early and they're going to eat by you but not sleep by you? Or they're going to eat by you and sleep by you? To say, let's get into a more complex question. You invite your family to come Shabbos Chanuka. They end up coming Friday, and they come Friday early. You can't come Friday late. So they come Friday early. They're going to light Hanukkah candles, obviously, by you. Again, it could be your children live close enough that after you eat the Suda Friday night, they're going to walk back home. So that's the same question. They're eating by you and they're sleeping back home. Where should they light Hanukkah candles? And if they light Hanukkah candles at home and the wife lights Shabbos candles at home, then they have to walk to you. Okay. Let's say they're sleeping by you. So they get there early. They light Friday Hanukkah candles with you. They sleep there Friday night. No problem so far. Shabbos, Motzoi Shabbos, they're going back home. Where should they light candles? Motzoi Shabbos. As soon as you make Havdalah, you're supposed to light Hanukkah candles. Should they light Hanukkah candles by you, knowing that they're going home Motzoi Shabbos? Or should they wait and light Hanukkah candles at home? What's the problem with wait? We learned that the Iker Zman of Hadlakas Nevas Hanukkah is basically that half-hour time slot. We'll call it from Tzeis HaKochavim. Let's use Tzeis HaKochavim. The Iker time to light Hanukkah candles is the half-hour after Tzeis.
Yes.
So you have your children. Friday night, they lit by you, and they ate by you, and they slept by you. Motzoi Shabbos, you daven Ma'ariv, it's already Tzeis HaKochavim. You make Havdalah, and then they say to you, we want it, or since we're going to be sleeping at home, we're going to light candles at home. By the time they get home, what's going to be? That first half an hour will be gone. So by waiting to light at home, they're going to miss the Iker Zman. So maybe they should light by you, even though they're not sleeping by you. So this is, all these shilas occupy a tremendous amount of poskim writing chuvas about this guest. So when your children come for a Hanukkah party, spend Hanukkah Shabbos, where to light, how to light, is a very interesting shaila that raises the issue of, one, where do you light where you eat? Or where do you light where you sleep? Or where do you light where you eat and sleep? And what happens if you're eating and sleeping? Are you allowed to leave your house completely unlit? Okay. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, next piece of Gemara, Kol hashmanim kulam yofim lener, all oil is very good to light Hanukkah candles. V'shemen zayis min hamufcha, olive oil is the chosen oil to use in the Chanukia. Amr Abaya said, May Reish have a mahadar mar. We learned about mar. Mar is my master. When Abaye says my master, he's talking about Rabbah. Abaye was an orphan from birth. His father died before he was born. And the reason he was called Abaye, the Sfarim bring down different reasons why he was called Abaye. One reason they say is Abaye is Aleph Beis Yud Yud. Avi Yesoimim Hashem, the father of orphans is God. Aleph Beis Yud Yud, the father of orphans is God. There are different reasons why it's called Abaye. But the person who really raised him and became his Rebbe and father was Rabbah, not Rava. Rava is his friend. Rabbah raised him. So when he says my master, he's talking about Rabbah. Amr Abaye said, Mereish hava mahada mar amishcha de shumshami. Initially, my master, Rabbah, when he went to get oil for the Chanuka, he went and got sesame oil. He was makbid to light Chanuka with sesame oil. Amar Rabbah said, Hai moshech nahayritvei. Sesame oil lasts longer than olive oil. So if you want to do a test, you want to do your own test, you can take 2 little cups of oil and put olive oil in one, sesame oil in the other, the same type of wick. You can't have one thick or one thinner, the same wick in both. Put them in the same exact place where there's no wind, and you'll see which one lasts longer. The Gemara says that Rabbah initially would use sesame oil because it lit longer. Even the Shomer Laha, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. But then when Rabbah heard that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi had said use olive oil, he stopped using sesame oil. Mahadar Amishcha Dezeisa, and then he would go out and buy and look for olive oil. Omar, Rabbah said, Hayt Solil Nahayritvei. Olive oil has an advantage that it's a clearer fire. It's a more pretty fire. So while sesame oil lasts longer, and that's what Rabbah initially used, he switched to olive oil because Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says it's a clearer, finer oil, even though it doesn't last as long. And that's the minute to try to use olive oil. I'm skipping about 8 lines. The Gemara goes now into a whole sugya about olive oil and how you mix. There's a certain way that sofrim, scribes who write tefillin, mezuzah, sefer Torah, they, in order to make the ink, they use different additives to the ink. And one of the things they use in different ways is olive oil. So the Gemara explains what you do with the olive oil to mix it into the ink. Okay, so we're up to now about 8 lines after that, at the 2 dots. Amma Reb Chia bar Ashi Amarav. Hamadlik ner shel Chanuka. Someone that lights a Chanukiah, tzarech levarech. He has to make a bracha. And we'll soon see why this is a chiddush. To us, there's a lot of times, I say this many times in shiurim, sometimes we learn Gemara and we say, what in the world is the Gemara talking about? The Gemara has to tell me I have to make a bracha when I light Chanuka candles. I started lighting Chanuka candles before I had my upsharing. When I was 2.5 years old, I lit a Chanukiah. I knew you had to make a bracha. Baruch. Everybody knows you have to make a bracha. What does the Gemara tell me you have to make a bracha? And the answer to all these questions is that we're educated post the Gemara, because the Gemara told you to light a bracha. So your Zayda knew, your father knew, and he told you. But it's a chiddush that you make a bracha on the Chanukiah. We'll see why in a couple of lines. It's not pasha that you can make a bracha when you light candles. Rav Yirmiyah adds another halacha, and this goes back to the homeless person. Rav Yirmiyah Omar haroya ner shel Chanuka tzarech levarech. Even if you only see a Chanukiah, but you're not lighting a Chanukiah, you also should make a bracha. This is the source of a big machlekes, what it means. Basically, For us, Rav Yirmiyah is talking about a person who is not going to be home or doesn't have a home. Therefore, he's not going to light that night, and he's walking through the street and he sees a Chanukiah. He's going to make brachas on seeing the Chanukiah, even though he himself is not lighting a Chanukiah. So there are cases where a person is, for example, Rashi says a person is on a ship. He's traveling by ship. And on a ship, you can imagine in those days, you're on a ship and it's Hanukkah, and you take out your little Chanukiah and you want to light it on the ship. They'll kill you. All the other passengers will kill you on the ship if you try to light a Chanukiah on a ship. Right? So you can't light. And you're going to be on the ship the whole night Hanukkah. You're not going to ever have the opportunity to light the Chanukiah that night. That's basically how we paskin. And as the ship is moving, he can see a Chanukiah on land. He makes a bracha on seeing the Chanukiah. This is a very interesting thing. Let's think about a homeless person. A homeless person doesn't have a Chanukiah to light, and he has no home to light it in. He's walking down the street, he sees a Chanukiah. So what does he do? Well, Elenu is a homeless person. He's going to make something called the Birkas Haroya, seeing the Chanukiah. Now, Tosfos in Sugya has a question. I'll just throw out the question as a riddle. Tosfos says, you have Lo Elenu, a homeless person, and it's Hanukkah. When he sees the Chanukiah, he makes a bracha. Why doesn't the same homeless person, when he walks by a house and he sees a mezuzah on the door, why shouldn't he make a bracha on seeing the mezuzah? He doesn't have a house for a mezuzah. When he sees the mezuzah, he should make a bracha. If he sees the Chanukiah, he makes a bracha. If he sees the mezuzah, he makes a bracha.
Yeah, but if you don't have a house, there's no chiyuv to put up a mezuzah, no?
So that comes back to the question. If you don't have a house, you don't have a chiyuv Chanukiah.
Okay.
Okay. But Rabbi said, what's the big two words about Hanukkah that we keep on repeating? The two words of Hanukkah.
Parsumei Nisa.
Parsumei Nisa. The point of the Chanukiah is Parsumei Nisa. Mezuzah is not Parsumei Nisa. So therefore, someone that Lo Elenu is homeless, he also has a din Parsumei Nisa. But he can't do it in his house. But when he sees the Chanukiah, he's going to make a bracha for a Parsumei Nisa. Mezuzah is not Parsumei Nisa. Okay. So the Gemara says, if you light candles, you make a bracha, and if you see the candles, you also make a bracha. But it's not the same brachas. Amar Rav Yehuda said, Yom Rishon, on the first night of Hanukkah, Haroa Mevorech Beis. If someone sees a Chanukiah, but he himself is not going to light one, he makes two brachas. Umadlek Mevorech Gimel. But the person who's going to light the Chanukiah on the first night, he makes three brachas. We don't know yet which ones. Mikan ve'elech, after the first night, Madlik Mevorech Shtayim, someone that lights the Chanukiah makes two brachas. V'roa, and someone that sees the Chanukiah because he himself is not going to light, Mevorech Achas, he makes only one bracha. So on the first night of Hanukkah, if you're lighting, you make three brachas. If you can't light and you only see, you make two brachas. On every other night of Hanukkah, if you're lighting, you make two. And if you see, because you can't light, you only make one. So the Gemara says, Maimamayit. What's the bracha that you drop? It goes from every night 3 to 2 or 2 to 1. Mamayit Zman. Zman min shechiyonu v'klimonu v'giyonu lazman hazeh. The bracha of shechiyonu is called in the Gemara the bracha of Zaman. V'klimonu v'giyonu lazman hazeh. So if you're lighting and it's the first night, you make three brachas. Lahadlik ner, she'osa nisim, shechiyonu. On the second night, two brachas. Lahadlik ner, she'osa nisim. But you don't make shechiyonu anymore. You only make shechiyonu once. So on the first night, there are three. On the second night, there are two. Lo Elenu, for example, a homeless person. He's not going to light. So on the first night, what two brachas does he make? She'osa nisim, which is the Parsumei Nisa, and he says Shechiyanu. But he can't make the bracha lahadlik. He's not lighting. Right. So on the first night, he makes two brachas, and after that, he's only going to make one. She'osa nisim. But again, he's not going to make Shechianu. So again, if you're lighting the Chanuka on the first night, there are three brachas: lahadlik, she'asa nisim, shechianu. After the first night, you make lahadlik, she'asa nisim, but you don't make shechianu. So on the first night it's three, on the second night it's two. If you're not lighting for whatever reason, a person is homeless, so on the first night it's two brachas: she'asa nisim and shechianu. Lahadlik he can't make because he's not lighting. On the second night, such a person will only make one bracha. She'asa nisim, but not shechianu. So the Gemara says, v'nimitnes, why are you only subtracting shechianu on the second night? You should subtract she'asa nisim also on the second night. You already made she'asa nisim. You praised God for the miracle on the first night. Why do you keep on making she'asa nisim every night? Gemara says, nes kol yoyme isa. The miracle of Chanuka occurred every single night. By saying she'asa nisim on the first night, you're celebrating the first miracle. When the second night of Chanuka comes, you have to make another she'asa nisim to celebrate the second miracle. And on the eighth night of Chanuka, you still make she'asa nisim because you're celebrating the eighth night of Chanuka. So she'asa nisim is made every night. Shechianu is only made the first night. And lahadlik is only made by a person that lights, not by a person that sees. So a person that lights goes from 3 to 2, and a person that sees goes from 2 to 1. Now this shechianu does not, it should be made on the first night. But let's say a person lit his Chanuka candles the first night and only made lahadlik and she'asa nisim. You've got to make a shechianu. When he lights the second night, he's going to say lahadlik, she'asa nisim, and shechianu, because he didn't say it the first night. The first time that you didn't say, the first time you're lighting in which you didn't say shechianu, you say shechianu. Naturally, for most people, that's the first night of Hanukkah. But if you forgot shechianu the first night of Hanukkah, you make the shechianu the second night of Hanukkah. So Gemara now says, "My mavarech." What brachas should you make? What are the three brachas if you're lighting, or the two brachas if you see a Chanuki? Mavarech asher kiddushanu b'tzayisa v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Chanuka. That's the first bracha. And by the way, there's a machlokes whether the bracha is lahadlik ner Chanuka or lahadlik ner shel Chanuka, because for Kabbalistic reasons, we want that bracha to have a certain number of words in it. So some people say lahadlik ner shel Chanuka. So you have the word shel in there to light the candles of Chanuka. Some people say lahadlik ner Chanuka to light the candle Chanuka. And as a compromise, some people gobble the words. They say lahadlik ner shel Chanuka. So they say shel Chanuka in one word. So there are three minhagim: lahadlik ner shel Chanuka, lahadlik ner Chanuka, or lahadlik ner shel Chanuka. Okay. Now we said that there's a problem, and the second bracha is she'asa nisim and shechianu. Now we said that the Gemara started the Sugya and says that if someone lights Chanuka candles, he makes a bracha. So we said, why does the Gemara? We asked, why does the Gemara have to tell me you make a bracha? Of course you make a bracha. It's a mitzvah. When you do a mitzvah, you make a bracha. So it's not so pashut you can make a bracha. Why? The Gemara asks, "V'heichen tzivanu Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'tzayisa b'tzivanu. Blessed are you, God, who sanctified me with mitzvahs and commanded me to light Chanuka candles." Here's a riddle that no one will answer, because there's no answer you can have for it. Where did God command us to light Chanuka candles? You have a pasuk in the Torah? No. You have a pasuk in the Nevi'im? No. Because the last Navi Malachi died 40 years into the second Beis HaMikdash, and the Chanuka miracle happened about 200 years in the second Beis HaMikdash. There was no Navi. The last Navi died about 160 years before Chanuka. So there's no Navi that wrote a book or mentioned Chanukah. So how do you say V'tzivanu? What do you mean God commanded? God didn't command you. So this is not a question by Purim. Rashi explains in Masechta Megillah Daf Yudalid, this is not a problem for Purim. On Purim, we can say Asher Kiddushanu Mitzvaysa B'tzivanu Al Mikra Megillah. Why? Because at the time of the miracle of Purim, that was at the end of the 70 years of Golus Bavel, and Nevi'im was still living then. And therefore, Nevi'im can instruct us in the name of God to perform a mitzvah. A Navi can say that this is somewhat of a problem in itself, but a Navi, when Nevi'im were alive, which was at the time of the establishment of Purim, Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi were still alive. So there was an ability to say, read the Megillah and make a bracha, V'tzivanu al Mikra Megillah. By the time Chanuka comes, 160 years after Malachi died, give or take some years, there's no Navi. So who's telling me to read them, to light the Chanukiah? Who's telling me?
Chazal.
The Tanoim. Tanoim who lived during the second Beis HaMikdash. Can Tanoim make a bracha? Tanoim or Tanoim? They are the people who are quoted in the Mishnah. But can they establish a mitzvah and say, V'tzivanu, God commanded you? They're not Nevi'im. They can't speak in the name of God. So how does the Gemara ask, V'heichan tzivanu? How can you say V'tzivanu on Chanukah? Gemara says, Rav Avya Omar. Rav Avya says, Mi loy sasu. The Torah says, loy sasu min advar masher yigid l'cha yom u'smol. You should not deviate from what Chachamim tell you to the left or to the right. There's a mitzvah l'shmoya divrei Chachamim. There's a mitzvah to listen to the words of Chachamim. So when we say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu mitzvaysa v'tzivanu. So let's say we say Asher kiddushanu mitzvaysa v'tzivanu al achilas matzah. God, you sanctified me and commanded me to eat matzah. We go to our Chumash, and we find a pasuk in Parshas Bo that says, "Eat matzah." Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu mitzvaysa v'tzivanu al netilas lulav. We go to our Chumash, and in Parshas Emor, we have a pasuk that tells us, "Hey, Dalaminim, Mikra Megillah, Asher Kiddushanu Mitzvaysa Mikra Megillah." Nevi'im told me to do it. But who told me to light a Chanukiah that I say V'tzivanu? So Rav Avia says, because if you go to your Chumash, the Chumash says Lo Sasum. You shall not deviate from the words of the Chachamim. Mitzvah l'shmoya divrei Chachamim. And therefore, when you light the Chanukiah, you're listening to the Tanoim who established the mitzvah of Chanukah in the middle of the second Beis HaMikdash. There's no Navi, but you're listening to the Chachamim. When you listen to the Chachamim, you're observing Lo Sasur. And therefore, you can make a bracha. This comment, this idea of Rav Avia is very troublesome because he's quoting a pasuk Lo Sasur, thou shalt not deviate. We don't make brachas on negative commandments. When the Torah says eat matzah, it's a positive commandment. So before I eat matzah, I make a bracha. The Torah says you should take daled minim. It's a positive commandment. I make a bracha before the daled minim. I don't make a bracha on negative commandments. I don't wake up every day and say Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvaysa v'tzivanu lo le'echol chazir. Every morning I'll get up and say, God sanctified me and commanded me not to eat a chaza. You don't make such a bracha, because you only make a bracha when God tells you to do something and you do it. When God tells you not to do something, we don't make a bracha, oh, and I didn't do it. So the Gemara says, how do you know you make a bracha? On Chanukah candles. There's no Navi alive at that time. How do you say, V'tzivanu, you commanded me? The answer is God did command you to light the Chanukiah because God said, listen to the Chachamim And how did God say that? Lo saucer. God didn't say listen to the Chachamim. God said don't deviate from them. That's what Rav Avia quotes. Don't deviate from them. It's not a positive commandment. How do you make a bracha on something that's not a positive commandment? Its own issue. Rav Nechemia says a different pasuk. This is also a troublesome pasuk. This is a positive pasuk, but it's not a commandment. The pasuk in Hazinu says, "Sh'al avicha v'yageitcha," ask your father and he can tell you. Zekeinecha v'yoimula, your elders and they can inform you. So this is a positive statement. Ask and they will tell. And therefore, Chanuka is, we can say, V'tzivanu, you commanded me, because my father told me to light a Chanukia. And my elders told me to light a Chanukia. Therefore, when I listen to my father, Shalavika, I listen to my elders, and they say light a Chanukia, I can say V'tzivanu, because God commanded me in Hazinu. Now, is Shalavicha v'yageitcha zekenecha v'yomulach one of the 613 mitzvahs? No, it's not. Nobody counts Shalavicha v'yageitcha zekenecha v'yomulach as one of the 613 mitzvahs. It's a good idea. God's giving us an Eitzah Taiva. There's an Eitzah Taiva. You want to know the truth? Ask the older generations, and they can pass the truth down to you today. That's one of the things Belined will talk about tomorrow. It's one of the tremendous observances of Chanuka. Chanuka is a time where we come to the point we understand that the history behind Klal Yisrael is the history upon which Klal Yisrael exists. Today, for those of you who know the vernacular, there's something called cancel culture in America. Anybody that has a statute erected to them, they're throwing down all the statutes. We don't want to know about the historical people of America. Throw down Lincoln, throw down everybody. We don't want to know about the history. We're going to start all over again because they were terrible people. Chanuka is the opposite of cancel culture. Chanuka is ask your father and he'll tell you, and ask your elders and they can inform you. We go back to the elders to tell us what to do. And that's how we know the truth. And that's when we say on Chanuka, V'tzivanu lahat ner shel Chanuka, God commanded me to light the Chanuka candles. Where did God command you to light the Chanuka candles? God commanded you to light the Chanuka candles when God said, listen to your elders and listen to previous generations. So the mitzvah of lighting a Chanuka candle, the bracha on lighting the Chanuka candle, is the Jewish recognition that what we are today is based on who we were before, the generations that came before. But either pasuk has a problem. How do you say lahat v'tzivanu? God didn't command us and there was no navi. Rav Avia says from Lo Saucer, don't deviate from what Chachamim said. Okay, Lo Saucer is one of the 613 mitzvahs, but it's a negative commandment, and we don't make brachas on a negative commandment. On the other hand, Rav Nechemia's pasuk, which is a positive statement, it's a positive statement, but on the other hand, it's not one of the 613 mitzvahs. So how can you say, V'tzivanu, you commanded me because of Shalavich V'yagetcha, which is not a commandment? On the other hand, how can you say V'tzivanu on Loisasu, which is a negative commandment? Okay, so either of these psukim have difficulties in them. But again, going back to the beginning of the Gemara said, if you light Hanukkah candles, you make a bracha. And we asked, what's the Gemara telling you? Of course, you're doing a mitzvah, you make a bracha. What does the Gemara say? If you light Hanukkah candles, you make a bracha. Now you know what the Gemara says. The Gemara had to tell you to make a bracha when you light Hanukkah candles, but it's not that simple that you can make a bracha. Because how do you say Asher Kiddushan Mitzvah V'tzivanu? Who commanded you to light Hanukkah candles? It's not a pasuk in Chumash, not a pasuk in Navi. There was no Navi alive. And again, Mikra Megillah is not a problem, Rashi says in Megillah Yudal, because there were Nevi'im alive. But how do you make a bracha on Hanukkah? Hanukkah remains the outstanding problem. How do you make a bracha on Hanukkah? And the answer is Loisasur, but it's a negative commandment, or Shalavicha V'yagetcha, which is a positive statement, but it's not a commandment at all. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow. We're really at the coming to the end of the Sugya of Chanuka. and we're able to look at some halachas.
Rabbi Lubling,
Yes.
I believe that Rabbi Rimon wrote a new sefer on the halachas of Chanuka.
Yes.
He did. Okay.
In his standard heavy-duty plastic page, beautiful pictures and beautiful charts.
Okay, good. Okay.
Now that Eliezer reminded me about Rav Rimon, so Imyetz Hashem, after Hanukkah, will be finished with the Chanuka Sugya, obviously. And several people have gotten emails, telephone calls, are interested in learning Shavias and the halachas of Shavias. Next year, this time, we'll be in the middle of Shemitah. So in order to learn Shemitah, in order to do it properly, and if you're interested, and seriously interested, each of you who are interested, first of all, please write me. Each of you has my email, so I know how many people are interested. If we have a group, we have a group. If we don't have a group, we don't have a group. But if you're interested and you want to learn it, it needs to be done properly. Properly means you need a Mishnayos, and then you need a handy halacha sefer so that we can understand how to apply it and live it. And this is one of the great opportunities after having made Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael and living in Eretz Yisrael. Every 7 years, we have this unbelievable complex mitzvah of Shemitah, and it gets very complex because we have to live it. Am I saimech on the heta mechira? Do I eat the fruits and vegetables of the Eida Charedis? Do I eat the fruits and vegetables of Rab Efrati? Do I have the hummus of the briskers? Do I eat fruits and vegetables from land that belongs to a goy in Eretz Yisrael? Do I only eat chutz la'aretz? All these questions are not questions. They're going to be questions that you have to live for an entire year, not 8 days. It's an entire year Shemitah. So in order to do this properly, it's going to require an investment of money by each of you who are interested. There's no other way to do it. The Mishnah, the Mishnayos, remember when we learned Shkolim, we use the Mishnayos called Mishnah Behira. This Mishnah Behira is about 45 shekel or so. And this is the Mishnayos, again, it's Hebrew, but it's the Mishnayos that has all the good pictures, and it also has the summation charts for the halach. That's half of the job. The other half of the job is Rabbi Ramon's thick sefer. It's in Hebrew and English. I'm holding the English version. The English version is all English. And you have colorful charts and colorful pictures. And everything is in order. The way we would learn Shavias is learning the Mishnah and then going to the halacha in Rav Rimon's sefer. I know that some of you already have Rav Rimon's sefer or have purchased it. If you're interested, please contact me today, no later than tomorrow, please, because the Mishnayos, according to Binyamin at the Merkaz, the Mishnayos will take several days, if not a week, to get. And Rav Rimon's sefer may take more than a week to get. So if we're going to do this and we have a chevra that's interested in doing it, please contact me, and that's what we'll learn when we finish the Chanuka Sugya. Okay.